Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Income is the Outcome, where we believe it's not how much you earn, it's how much you keep. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley, and joining me in the studio is the founder and president of the Whistler Agency, Tim Whistler. We're so glad you're joining us today. We are going to be talking about something so critical to folks' success in retirement and probably the number one reason why most people are afraid of running out of money. So we're going to get into all that and what this means for you and how you can protect yourself accordingly. Tim, my friend, excited as I always am every week to have this conversation with you. How are you?
Thank you, Kristin. I'm always excited to be here with you as well. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Well, good. Well, I know today's conversation is a subject that on the outset isn't always the most fun thing to talk about. We're going to be talking today about long-term care, but don't change that channel. We know that this is something that's a huge concern at the top of most folks' minds, especially as they think about having enough money to last them throughout the rest of their lives. And we were talking before today's show. I know I've seen this, you have as well. Typically, folks don't think about long-term care until they've had to walk through this process with aging relatives. Maybe you've gone through this with aging parents, and all of a sudden, it really sparks that urgency of we've got to get this figured out for ourselves, right?
Right. I mean, if somebody experiences what mom or dad are going through, with needing some extra care, again, that Medicare doesn't pay for. Now all of a sudden they have firsthand experience with that.
Right.
What's all involved with it, what type of care do they need to maintain a good quality of life, and most importantly, how much does that cost? And that's usually when it really becomes a reality from the standpoint of, again, like we said before, it's not our favorite topic,
right?
But it is so critical that we have this included in the overall retirement income plan.
Well, you've put together such a fabulous show. We're going to be doing a deep dive on this subject today, and we're going to be referencing our notes because there's a lot of details. It can get really complicated. Think of today's show as giving a really good overarching overview picture of all these different aspects of long-term care that folks need to be prepared and informed about, right?
I think that's a great way to approach it, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's talk about some of the numbers, because the fact is that 70% of folks who reach the age of 65 and older will need some type of long-term care. So with numbers like that, this makes this a topic that cannot be ignored. Let's just start with the basic of what long-term care is, because I think people are familiar with the term, but you and I both know that the definition of what we're talking about here is very important and critical. So if you had to just define it in basic terms, what is long-term care?
It's basically two different types of events that can happen to us. We have severe cognitive impairment. In other words, all of a sudden our mental capabilities start to slip a little bit. Alzheimer's starts to creep in. Maybe some dementia starts to creep in.
Right.
So that's the severe cognitive impairment. Number two is the physical aspect. So think in terms of what you did this morning. It's what we call the activities of daily living. There's actually 6 of them. So if you think in terms of when you get out of bed, you transferred yourself to the bathroom, you got to the bathroom on time. In other words, we have control of our bowels and our bladder. We can use the bathroom by ourselves. We have the ability to bathe or shower ourselves, and then we go feed ourselves. So by breakfast, you've basically performed all 6 activities of daily living.
Right? Known as ADLs.
ADLs, that's exactly right. So if we can't perform 2 of them, now we have the benefit of being qualified for long-term care.
So if you can't perform 2 of the 6 of these activities of daily living, that's when, in a sense, you qualify for long-term care, right?
That's the qualifying trigger. That's exactly right. We're no longer able to care for ourselves, maybe physically, or all of a sudden we're not quite there, with our mental capabilities anymore. We need some help. We need somebody to care for us. That's usually what triggers what they call a long-term care benefit event.
Right. Now, one of the misconceptions I know I've heard, you've heard this as well, a lot of folks think, oh, well, that's okay because I'll have Medicare and Medicare will kick in and it will cover these costs. But that's actually a very dangerous misconception. Can you shed some light on what Medicare does cover versus what it does not?
Absolutely. And to your point, I was blessed to be a Medicare broker for 19 years. And it was a joy to do that. It was a joy to serve those folks in that arena. And that was a very common misconception. Think in terms of Medicare being a short-term care plan, not a long-term care plan. Because the definitions that Medicare, in order for them to cover some benefits for you, there has to be a certain triggering event. So for example, Medicare will pay a maximum of 100 days for a skilled nursing facility, okay? The first 20 days are covered. The next 80 days will require a co-payment. So there's an out-of-pocket expense that maybe we haven't planned for.
And skilled care, let's just say that an example is if someone falls and breaks their hip, right?
Right.
That's what we're talking
Right.
about.
We need to go to a facility. We need some care. We can't have that care at home.
Right.
So we go to a skilled care facility.
Yes. Okay.
Another triggering event is that it begins on the 3rd consecutive day after being in the hospital. So again, now we're talking Medicare. So the only time Medicare will cover this event is you have to be in the hospital for 3 consecutive days. Then you go to that skilled nursing facility benefit.
Right.
They'll cover the first 20 days, and then the next 80 days are covered with a copayment with Medicare, but you have to keep in mind the limit is 100 days. It does not matter if you have a Medicare supplement plan or if you have a Medicare Advantage plan. The limit is 100 days for skilled nursing, and it has to follow those triggering events in order for Medicare to cover the short-term benefit.
Right. So there's very specific things. And then if somebody has a condition that moves to chronic care and Medicare stops, or if they never qualified for Medicare skilled care coverage to begin with, what are their options?
You know, and this is the tough part. This is why a lot of people want to avoid this conversation, because it's basically pay out of pocket. You know, that's not something we want to think about, because you worked, you saved, you sacrificed all those decades. You've got a retirement income plan of all the different things you want to do in your go-go years, and all of a sudden, here comes an unexpected cognitive event or a physical event where now all of a sudden we need care. And you know, this is why these conversations have to happen. And we have to incorporate them into the overall retirement income plan. You know, very seldom, Kristin, when I have those get acquainted conversations, and I'm asking folks, you know, why are you here? What's on your mind? What are we trying to address? We get the popular ones. Well, the markets scare me a little bit. I want to tend to some market volatility.
Right.
I'm concerned about some taxes. You know, how do I efficiently take withdrawals from taxes? And every now and then, somebody will come and say, you know what? Long-term care kind of scares me a little bit because of what my mother went through, what my father went through. We don't know if we have enough money to cover that if that should happen to us. So if that's you, if you're watching in today and you're thinking, yeah, we're kind of aware of the element of, we know that about 70% could possibly affect long-term care in your retirement income plan, that might be us. Let's have the conversation. Even if you're already working with somebody and maybe that conversation is not being broached by that advisor. A lot of advisors like to ignore that. We don't. We will include that in the overall written financial plan for you, making sure that as we plan for life on your terms, we also want to make sure that we have defenses set up in case something happens to us without our permission.
Very wise. And I know that probably a lot of folks watching are going, yeah, this is something that's been on my mind. Maybe it's something you've been concerned about. Maybe you're already working with another financial professional, but they're not having this kind of conversation with you. This is why Tim would love to be able to provide this opportunity to receive a second opinion to see how this important conversation could affect your overall financial plan so that you can be prepared to navigate it for yourself successfully. It starts with you picking up the phone and calling the number on the bottom of your screen to schedule your time to come in and receive your very own complimentary written financial plan. 888-992-7829 is the number to call, or you're welcome to scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to be diving into the different types of care coverage that exists and what those costs could look like potentially here in Central Illinois. Stay with us.
Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, Ben. Hey, birthday party for Carol and 5. Happy birthday to you.
Good morning, Ben. Happy Monday.
Daryl's birthday, be there or be square. Happy birthday to you. You can see from our quarterly report on slide number 62, we're trending in the right direction. All signs point to a very positive outlook for the next several years. If you peel back the onion
Ben, do you have anything to add?
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
Well, welcome back to Income is the Outcome. I'm Kristin Oakley here with Tim Whistler, founder and president of the Whistler Agency. If you're just tuning in and joining us today, we are having the very important conversation all about long-term care. We know that this is something that a lot of folks are afraid to navigate when it comes to their retirement planning. We know this is the number one fear that most folks have about running out of money because, like it or not, these costs are absolutely astronomical, and it creates what can be considered a healthcare invasion. And we want to make sure that you're prepared for that and you're protected as well. As you said, it's so hard when folks have worked their whole lives and saved their hard-earned money. And then the thing about long-term care is you don't know if you're going to need it or not, right?
Right. We have no crystal ball, unfortunately, to refer to.
Exactly. But statistically, we have to be prepared for it.
And
it's hard to plan for something that you don't know what you need, how long you need it, how much it's going to be.
Right. So therefore, since we don't know, it's not a topic of conversation we want to address, but it's one that I think is so critical that we do because of the damage that can be caused from it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know we're in this segment, we're going to get into the types of care, specifically here in Central Illinois, along with the costs of that associated care. But I want to go back. You mentioned that Medicare only covers skilled care and not chronic care. So for our viewers, can you go into a little more depth to explain these two different types of care?
Absolutely. And because I'm not a healthcare professional, but I live with one, I'm going to refer to my notes because
Yes,
I don't want to mess
perfect.
up definitions.
Yes, for folks who don't know your lovely life, Rhonda, right?
Yes, my wife Rhonda is she was a nurse for all of her professional year from college all the way up till now. So that's been a wonderful blessing to live with somebody like that. But I want to make sure that in case she watches and tunes in, I don't say the wrong phrase. So
All right.
so short term, just like to your point, Kristin, short term is a short-term care plan. So in other words, it's focused on recovery.
That's skilled care, yes.
Skilled care, that's right, a short-term plan. So it's focused on short-term medical treatment from professionals, maybe help with and recover from an injury or illness. So for example, some examples are wound care, post-surgical rehab, maybe a post-stroke rehab, some type of therapies. In other words, the duration is short-term, so therefore weeks or months.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Now you transition to chronic. Chronic is long-term, right? This is where we're aimed at managing a condition over time. That's a definition that came right out of that. It's ongoing medical management for long-term persistent health conditions that require continuous monitoring and treatment. So for example, diabetes management, hypertension monitoring, arthritis. So in other words, unfortunately, these are the illnesses that really don't have a remedy. They're chronic, they're long-term. So that's kind of the difference between skilled and chronic.
Right. Okay. So those are the two types of care. Can you break down where folks might be receiving these types of care? What locations, if you will, connotate which kind of care they're receiving?
Absolutely. So it really breaks down to two different locations. The most popular one is at home. Most people really like to stay at home. We're comfortable there.
If they're able to, for sure.
If we're able to, that's exactly right. If we like that lazy boy, we like our own bed. Sometimes the care is being given what we call informally. It's given by a family member, maybe the spouse, maybe a niece or a nephew, maybe an adult child. We're getting that care at home, and it's considered to be informal. Well, another type of in-home health care is what they call home health care. So now that's not so much informal. Now you're bringing a formal professional coming in, some home health care aide or home health care nurse now is providing those services to you. Then you look at what just happened with COVID, and it really, I think, shed light on the fact of the next option is the one that most people want to avoid, and that's going to the facility. That's going to a nursing home. But there are things out there called, like, for example, assisted living facilities. There's adult daycare, and of course, there's the nursing home. So, COVID really reflected or really revealed the fact that most people really don't want to go there because of when all of a sudden we got forced into separating from our families. I mean, think of those poor folks who couldn't even see mom or dad or couldn't see their loved one because of that. So if we can get the care, most people like to have that care at home, but also knowing too, we can always fall back to a professional facility if that's necessary for our care that we need.
Right. Well, I know the biggest question on a lot of folks' minds when it comes to long-term care is the cost. And these costs can be absolutely astronomical. So that's what we want to dive into now, because we know that Medicare is not covering these costs and it's not free. So I know you have some statistics here for current pricing here in Central Illinois. And this is important because I know we have viewers that, watch our show, might be traveling out of state or visiting family in different areas across the country, have different costs. But let's talk specifically for this area what we're looking at.
Absolutely. So we rely upon information that came through from 2024. This is the monthly median cost for Central Illinois. Now, again, You're watching in Bloomington Normal, you're watching in Champaign, you're watching in Springfield, you're watching in Peoria. So the cost might vary on each city, but they're pretty close from the average. Now, again, if you look at Chicago, that's a whole different set of costs.
Right, yeah.
But if we focus here in Central Illinois, so if you look at, for example, adult day health care, on the average month, you're gonna spend about $3,100 a month for that.
Okay.
Right? It's kind of just some casual care. You're there just temporarily. Assisted living, however, nearly doubles. We're talking about $5,800 a month for assisted living. In-home care, we talked about that. If there is not the ability to provide the informal in-home health care, in other words, done by a family member, and now we need that professional to come in on a regular basis, you're talking about $6,600 a month for that home health care situation. And now it continues on. If we go into that facility, that nursing home facility, a semi-private room might be somewhere around $8,000. A private room is even more. It's more like $9,000.
Yeah.
And I know
and
I've
that's
had
a month.
that is per month.
Yep.
So you figure if there's 30 days in a month and we're at $9,000, that's $300 a day. That's more than some hotels will charge you to stay at a pretty nice, comfortable place. And that's ongoing. It may just perpetually continue to unfold throughout retirement. So those numbers are not something we want to really address, because we want to avoid that. But also something else we have to be mindful of is that dreaded word called inflation.
Yes.
They're kind of forecasting this to increase about 3% per year. Now it can be higher than that because of all the turmoil going on with inflation right now. But if you think in terms of time and how quickly time passes, if we're 60 years old watching this today, and with a 3% inflation rate, by the time you're 83, about the time you'll probably need care, those numbers are going to double.
Wow.
That's the power of inflation, and that's why we have to address this and understand what the numbers are and how can we build a plan around what we possibly will need in care down the road. And
this is why I'm so glad we're going to devote the rest of today's conversation to solutions, because I think, again, it's a really frustrating thing. Folks don't know if they're going to need long-term care, what type of long-term care they're going to need, how long they might need it, right? They don't know what life is going to look like, for example, in 23 years, if we use that example that you just shared. But here's the problem, it has to be planned for. You have to get in front of this.
We do. And again, like Kristin said, we're going to talk about the solutions here in a second. But again, if you're watching and this has been on your mind, or maybe you're like, I'm trying to avoid it, we don't want to talk about it. Well, we have a plan right now. The question you have to answer then is, does the plan include a long-term care strategy? If it doesn't, we need to have a conversation. Because from the standpoint of, this is not designed to put us into a perpetual state of being fearful of anything. We want to be aware of what can happen. We don't want to get caught off guard. I always like to kind of joke with my clients, if there's two things we can avoid in retirement, we'll do well. Surprises and regrets. If we can avoid those, I think we have a pretty good shot of realizing that ideal retirement. But folks, again, you've lived long enough to understand that life happens to you without your permission all the time. And if you come into retirement and a skilled care situation comes up, or even worse, a chronic care comes up, and we cannot provide the care that we would like to have or need to have at home, and we have to go to a facility or have a professional come in, where do we get the dollars to pay for that? Let's sit down, let's have the plan, let's talk through and make sure we have a plan for what just might happen later on down the road.
Tim, that was so well said. And I think when it comes to long-term care, talk about a surprise and a regret if it's not planned for. So again, we encourage you, you don't have to go this alone. We know that this will be the first time that you're navigating through this for yourself. Guess what? This is what Tim and the Whistler Agency have helped hundreds of folks navigate through successfully. They would love to have this conversation with you and help make sure that you're prepared as well. 888-992-7829 is that number to call. Or again, you're welcome to scan that QR code and that will get you connected to be able to come in and sit down for no cost, no charge, no obligation, and simply have this conversation to see how they can help and serve you. When we come back, we're going to dive deeply into the solutions. I'm excited for Tim to be able to share with you what he's been able to do to empower some people to provide for themselves and these long-term care costs. Stay with us to find out what those solutions are right after this.
I remember telling my dad when I was a senior at Illinois State University, Dad, I always want to run my own small business of some sort of fashion. Didn't really know what that looked like. And then in February of 2000, my wife and I celebrated the birth of our firstborn, Cameron. And at the time we were living in Denver. About a couple of weeks after his birth, my mom and dad were going to make the trip out. And I remember that morning, my dad calling and saying, hey, Mom's not feeling good today, so we're going to postpone leaving today. We'll try to leave tomorrow. And unfortunately, tomorrow just kept coming and coming and coming. It never showed up. So a couple months passed and we decided to go ahead and make the drive back to Central Illinois. And the first time my mom met Cameron she was in a hospital bed. The doctor diagnosed her with very aggressive terminal small cell cancer. My very first Father's Day there in June of 2000 was the last Sunday my mom was ever alive ever again. It was shortly thereafter that when my father went and received some financial advice, and we started talking a little bit more detail about finances, and I started looking at these statements, and I said, Dad, this guy's taking advantage of you. He's doing so much buying and selling in your account that you're losing a ton of money to pay his commissions. I said, I'm gonna start earning my licenses right now to become a financial advisor, because what you just experienced, I think, is happening way too often in our industry. I wanna focus my life on not just making a living, I wanna make a difference. It was not an easy journey. It was certainly not a smooth ride at all. It was a lot of ups and downs. You know, success is not owned, it's rented, and the rent is due every day.
Welcome back to Income is the Outcome, where today Tim and I have been discussing long-term care. We know that this is an issue that can keep a lot of people up at night. We hope that today's show is empowering you. We've gone through the different types of care. We've talked about the cost, which is really what most folks are concerned about, and rightly so. Now it's time to talk about the solutions. And clearly, Tim, having a well-constructed financial plan can really help protect folks and insulate them from this potential healthcare invasion, which could wipe out someone's financial plan. So it's so important to have a plan in place. Let's go through, I know there's 4 types of solutions, and we want to kind of give a good overview of each of them. So what are those 4 types? Go ahead and list them for us.
So there's basically, we start off with the one that we really don't like to think about as much. It's called Medicaid. Then we have the traditional long-term care policy. Then we have a self-insure kind of a plan. And then we have what we call an asset-based plan. So Medicaid, again, don't confuse that with Medicare. A lot of people like to intertwine those. So Medicare is your hospital and medical benefit plan. Medicaid is a joint federal and state program that provides resources for folks who don't really have many resources or have low income. And oftentimes Medicaid can pop up if we decide to go the self-insure route and decide to say, hey, we're gonna buy a bunch of CDs and let these CDs sit over to the side. And in case long-term care pops up, we'll use those dollars and self-insure for the plan. If those dollars run out, now we're on Medicaid. So that's what Medicaid is. The second option is traditional long-term care policies. Those have been around for decades. Those sit on what they call the health insurance chassis. And we know what health insurance costs do. They increase pretty much every year.
Right.
And it's pure insurance. So think in terms of, you know, our auto and our home insurance policies. They really only benefit us if there's a claim. We don't want there to be a claim, but we pay those insurance premiums to help provide some financial benefit, if you will. If we have a claim, we have some coverage benefits. That's what a traditional long-term care policy does. So it provides us with some benefits. It has specific coverages in there. But again, if we just pay all those premiums for all those years, which are ongoing, and they increase, if you just peacefully pass away in your sleep at 92 years of age, and you've never needed this plan, those dollars are gone.
Right, so if you don't use it, you lose it, essentially.
That's the phrase, use it or lose it.
Yep.
We talked about self-insure. That's basically we're just taking some dollars, and that's really kind of what we call a dollar for dollar approach. We have $1,000 or $100,000 in CDs. We have $100,000 we can earmark for long-term care costs. Great. Are those CDs return of interest, or return of premium, I should say? Return on investment? Goodness, a lot of terminology.
Yes.
Return on investment, are they keeping up with inflation? Possibly not. So that fourth option is the one, if it can fit into the overall plan, it's another version of self-insure, but you're using pennies on the dollars instead of dollars for dollar. In other words, you're leveraging some of your assets to create what we call an asset-based long-term care strategy.
Okay, so let's dive more deeply into that one, because I know that this is something that you have shared with me, that a lot of times when folks have come in to meet with you for the first time and have this conversation, they're not even aware of this fourth option of asset-based long-term care. So yeah, let's talk about that and help folks understand a little bit more about what goes into it.
So if you think in terms of having some guarantees, that provides a little extra peace of mind. And that's what this product is designed to do. It basically provides a benefit to the policyholder if we experience a long-term care triggering activity or need care. But number two, if we just peacefully pass away again in our sleep at 92 and never needed any of this benefit, those dollars that we set aside are going to be passed on to another family member.
Wow.
So therefore, it's
Big
not
difference.
Absolutely. It's not no longer use it or lose it type of approach. So how we do that, there's two main vehicles that can accomplish this: annuities and life insurance policies. Okay, there's a couple. So we'll kind of hit high level. Again, this is not advice. We're just kind of hitting the solutions here. But let's say, for example, we decide to go with the annuity option. Okay. And let's say we're going to earmark $50,000. We might be able to leverage 2 to 3 times that $50,000 into a bucket of money that we can draw down if we have a qualifying event for long-term care. That means we want to get care at home. It'll help pay for that home health care professional. If we have to go to the facility, it'll help provide care and the expenses for that facility. So again, it's the easiest option because there's no medical exams. We're simply using one of the annuity members and simply shifting $50,000 into another bucket of money that by the time we age and possibly need it, it's now maybe worth $100, $150.
Okay.
So that's one option.
Okay.
The other option is basically using life insurance. Now, the joy about life insurance is the fact of you have a premium that's locked in. Right? Our premiums do not increase as time. So if you have a term policy or if you have one of the members of the permanent policy, that premium's locked in. You can take that same strategy and apply it to what we call a hybrid long-term care policy.
Okay.
So using the example of $50,000, you might be able to leverage your money 4 to 6 times inside of this option here, because if you need care, basically that $50,000 could be worth $200,000 or $300,000 down the road.
Wow.
Now this isn't quite as simple as the annuity the annuity option, because unfortunately this will be medically underwritten, right? Because it sits on the chassis of life insurance.
Right.
So we have to qualify for it.
Yep.
So if we do have the ability to be qualifying for that, now all of a sudden we have leveraged $50,000. It now could be worth $200,000 or $300,000 down the road. And again, if we just peacefully pass away in our sleep, transition to eternity, and never needed any type of this care, somebody in that family is going to benefit from those dollars. They're not just forever, those dollars are not forever lost.
Right.
But now you've basically complemented your retirement income plan and all the assets that you own by leveraging these dollars over here and create another bucket of money just in case long-term care expenses pop up in our future.
No wonder that option is becoming a lot more appealing to folks for all the reasons you just mentioned. And I know we only have a minute less and we can't give specific advice on this show, but you've done such a great job of highlighting all the different types that exist. How does someone go about figuring out what would be the right solution for them?
It all starts with a conversation. Come in, let's unpack the income, the expenses, the assets, and let's talk through the plan of if this would happen to you, how do we address those expenses and keep your retirement assets as protected as best that we can?
Wonderful. Tim, thank you so much. And thank you for being willing to have this conversation. We know it's not the most fun topic on the planet, but it's a top concern for many, many folks. And we hope that you have found this to be helpful and beneficial. Again, to find out what would be right for you, we encourage you to reach out. 888-992-7829 is that number to call, or you're welcome to connect by scanning that QR code. Be safe, be happy, be blessed, and we look forward to being back with you next time here on Income is the Outcome.